Welcome into another edition of Gold and Black Radio. I'm your host, Derek Schulz. And you look at where Purdue is right now as far as a basketball recruiting standpoint, and it's very busy. There's no doubt about that. Very, very busy with where Purdue is. And Brian Neubert has been the one that has been tracking all of that. He has been on the road, in fact, following Purdue around and following a lot of their high priority targets around. In fact, he was just down south, and he's going to join us to talk about where Purdue is on a couple of those high priority targets here in just a few moments. But as always, let's first give a great shout out to our terrific Gold and Black sponsors that make Gold and Black radios possible, including Purdue Federal Credit Union, a proud partner of Purdue Athletics and the official credit card for Purdue fans. Boiler up. East End Grill and Ripple and Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street, the perfect place for your next event. The Whitaker Inn, this Midwestern oasis, is perfect for a relaxing staycation or a weekend getaway. Escape from the ordinary at the Whitaker Inn. The Sand Valley Resort, tee off this golf season at Sand Valley using their online booking platform. It's as easy as ever to find availability and experience golf as it was meant to be. Conveniently located in the breathtaking dunes of central Wisconsin, Sand Valley offers a collection of award-winning courses designed by world-renowned architects that are suitable for all skill levels. Visit sandvalley.com and book your tee times online today. And finally, the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research, which has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Purdue brings together world-class Boilermaker scientists from across the university, conducting cutting-edge research that uncovers new ways to prevent, diagnose, and treat cancer. With your support, cancer research saves lives. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. Let's go ahead and welcome on Brian Neubert, who is fresh off his trip from down south. And Brian, you go to a lot of events and have gone to a lot of events over the years. I'm sure you even attended some defunct events. You have a particular area of the country that is your favorite when it comes to traveling? And, I know Lincoln, Nebraska in the middle of January is not probably a personal favorite, but is South Carolina in the summer higher on that list, I would think?
I love South Carolina. I actually think South Carolina would be a great place to retire, a great place to live. Gorgeous state, really, really nice people down there. And, it's always fun going down there in the summer, except, of course, for the heat. It is oppressive, shall we say. But outside of that, not like it's much better in Indiana in July. I guess it's better to be further south instead of sweating like crazy here. There are no Publix in Indiana. There's the food in South Carolina. It tends to be a little bit more diverse, better in a lot of cases. So I'm a big fan of South Carolina in the summer. If we're taking into account like in basketball season travel, I have no issues whatsoever with Lincoln. I love Lincoln. I love Omaha. It's just that weather. It's just every time you drive past those gates on the interstate between Omaha and Lincoln that would close off the interstate as needed, you are reminded of what you're getting away with when you make that trip without incident. And I found out the hard way a few years back when I got stuck there an extra day, not because I couldn't get back to Omaha for my flight, but because I couldn't get from Lincoln to Omaha because they closed the interstate. So
Wow.
in-season travel for Purdue basketball is very different than summer travel for basketball recruiting, to say the least.
Yeah, and a lot of times you're not leaving Rock Hill, South Carolina at 1 a.m., whereas sometimes at a Wednesday night game, you're filing the story and you're trying to get back at 1 a.m. or whatever in the middle of the night, and it's January and there's snow on the road and the whole deal. The good news is that Luke Erdle in Rock Hill looked to be back to his usual self. But all of that said, Brian, and you've kind of said this as he was sort of going through it with, resting up and trying to get back to himself. Have we kind of seen everything you've needed to see from Luke Erdle out there on the basketball court?
Yeah, I don't know if I needed to see anything. I don't know if Purdue needed to see anything, but I think nationally, I think he's gotten a lot of recognition because he's played so well in the spring and summer. I think he's kind of been empowered this grassroots season to really be aggressive and really show what he can do as a scorer and a playmaker and things like that. And I think that has sort of changed whatever perception might have been out there about him being an under-recruited, scrappy, typical Matt Painter, competitive, intangible guy to honest to goodness, outstanding player. He's done a great job scoring. He's done a great job as his team's foremost playmaker. They have good players, but they don't have a lot of playmakers. There has been a lot of responsibility on Luke Erdle with Indiana Elite this year, and he has delivered and then some. I don't know if he was himself this past weekend. I don't know if it would have shown up to anybody who doesn't have the same discerning eye for him as I do, because I've seen him play 100 times. But he clearly was still dealing with some ramifications from the ankle injury and the couple weeks he had to sit out because of it. I think that, he plays so hard and he has to play so much for that team. It's just hard. And he has to do so much that it's hard for him to be 100% or look 100% at all times. And the fact he still produces the way he does is a testament to his will, to his stamina, to his competitiveness, and just how much he can kind of dig deep and perform every time he goes out there. Now he sat out the last game to get ready for the games in California this upcoming weekend. He certainly earned the break, because he gave every shred of himself in the games in three of the 5 games that I saw down there, or I saw 3 of his 5 games. I think, 3 of his 5, and he gave every bit of himself in all those games, and that's what that's part of the intangibles, part of the composition, his composition as a player that really drew Purdue to him right away.
And sometimes when it's, I don't want to say necessarily diamond in the rough. I don't want to undersell, Luke Erdle was fine as a recruit, but he's shot up now as a recruit. But sometimes with these guys that are, these Matt Painter finds, if you will, the projections have said when people have talked about them, well, he might not be an instant impact guy. It might take a little while for him to kind of grow and develop. And if that's the case, I guess that's fine. But has he reached the point now, Brian, where you think maybe he can be an instant, if not an instant impact guy, an instant, see the court and produce type guy once he gets there?
I don't see why not. I mean, everything kind of starts over when a kid, shows up on campus. We'll see what Purdue's roster looks like. They will have Jakari Harris, C.J. Cox, and Omer Mayer, Antoine West, Jack Benner, off the top of my head, I think, and then whoever else comes in that class with Erdle. But I think, Purdue needs the right mix at all times, and I think his competitiveness, his IQ, his tenacity, his intangibles, his ability to make a jump shot are all things that align with a player getting an early opportunity to be a contributor in one form or another. I don't think Purdue's turning the keys over to him right away like they did Braden Smith out of sheer necessity, on top of the fact Braden Smith was ready for it. I don't think it's that type of deal, but I don't see any reason at this point in time why he can't play an important role, potentially at a couple of different positions for a very, very different looking Purdue team next season. I think he's a guy who can play point guard. I think he's a guy who can play the other 2 guard spots. I think he can guard a couple different positions. I think he can shoot and play make from any position he plays. And that sort of versatility is kind of what you're going to see this year from Omer Mayer too, I think. And he might slide right into that kind of role. And, almost certainly Omer Mayer is Purdue's point guard in that class, barring anything unforeseen. But I don't see any reason why Luke Erdle can't be a really valuable type of utility guard right away at Purdue. But that's a long way off. Obviously, things reset for every recruit when they enroll in college. He's going to have a lot to learn. He's going to obviously have to stay healthy. I think he's had some nagging things over the last couple months here that hopefully for everybody's sake he can put behind him in time for his senior year in high school. He plays really hard, and I think he plays really physical, and he goes 100 miles an hour, and he exposes himself to some things probably that aren't ideal, but you'd rather have that than not. So does Braden Smith, and Braden Smith's gotten through his career since breaking his foot in high school completely unscathed. And I think that, Luke Erdle's kind of cut from the same cloth. They're very different players, but I think they're very similar competitors. They have very similar wills, and I think that always aligns with a certain preparedness that could really help him be a player for Purdue right away.
When talking about the rest of the players that you saw down in Rock Hill, any other targets that jumped out to you? And also, Purdue's now shifting plans to power forward and trying to find some solutions there. What are your thoughts on both of those areas?
Yeah, I think he literally just got offered like an hour before we recorded this, but Jacob Weber, the shooter from Nebraska who's going to La Lumiere this year, up in northern Indiana. I think he's the sort of guy that Purdue has really helped make Purdue one of the best offensive programs in the country here the past decade or so. He's a really dynamic shooter. He's a great 3-point shooter, but it's different when it's a guy who can run and move and make shots on the move, and you can run him off a lot of off-ball action and things like that. You can manipulate defenses with his presence. That's what Sasha Stefanovic never got credit enough during his Purdue career, the back portion of his Purdue career, for what he meant to that overall offensive mix in terms of moving defenses around, creating openings for post entries, things like that, simply because people had to respect the fact that this was a guy that if you didn't guard him like an alpha, he'd make 6 threes potentially and beat you almost single-handedly. You remember the Virginia game in Mackey Arena. People took notice of games like that, and they started making him a defensive scouting report priority. And once that happened, all of a sudden, the paint opens up for Ross-Ade, the paint opens up for Travion Williams, the paint opens up for Jaden Ivey, whoever it might have been at the time. And you add a guy like Jacob Weber, there's a ton of stuff you can do with them offensively, not just to get them shots, but to get everybody else shots. And I think he's a really unique guy in that sense, in his ability to run and move and shoot off the catch and things like that. And I just think it was a no-brainer offer for Purdue after Painter basically saw him score 65 points in 2 games in the day he was at Adidas. And we'll see if Purdue can get him. Creighton is going to probably loom large there, I'd have to think. He's from Nebraska. But he's got ties all over, so it'll be interesting to see how Purdue fares with him. But he was interested enough before the offer that he and his family drove out from Kearney, Nebraska during the season to see the Alabama game. And if you've ever driven from Kearney, Nebraska to West Lafayette, we were just talking about this drive through Nebraska to Indiana. But it is not a short drive, so you don't just hop in the car one day like you live in Indianapolis and say, hey, I'm going to the Purdue game tonight. So if you're willing to do that, that shows really genuine interest in my assessment.
Cam Williams is a guy that Purdue would have to fight off more than just Creighton for. Has a couple of high-level offers, including Duke, is a top 10 player in the 24/7 sports rankings, and a couple of others as well that are up there, rivals, etc. Have you had the chance to see Cam Williams play, or what do you know about him, and what can you tell us about where Purdue is as far as his recruitment is concerned?
Sorry, I'm being stalked by a dog here. I'm not not listening.
Mine's barking upstairs. I'm not sure if it's going over the mic or not.
Shh, don't jinx it. So Cam Williams is a really tall, really long power forward type who's going to have to get bigger and stronger as his career moves along. But he's really skilled. He's got perimeter ability. He's a shot blocker. He can handle the ball a little bit. Long-term prospect, in my opinion. He's going to get major offers. He has gotten major offers because of his upside. And, the Blue Bloods are on him for that reason, because he's got all the talent in the world on top of the height and the length and things like that. But there's a lot of unrealized potential there with him too. Purdue offered him a while back. They've got him coming in for an official visit in the fall. It's obviously going to be really tough to get him. if they do get him, it might be one of those deals where you play him as a freshman because you kind of have to, because he's such a heralded recruit. He's going to struggle early, probably at the college level, wherever he goes, with the physicality of the game, things like that. But he's also one of those guys that by the final 2 months of the season might be brilliant. And the risk you run, the good problem to have with guys like that and guys like Anthony Thompson from Ohio, is that by the time they figure it out, right, by the time they become really good winning players at the college level, you run the risk of losing them because they're NBA guys. It is an older player's game now in college basketball. It is a more physical player's game now in college basketball. And the difference between prospect and good player probably has never been more pronounced than it is right now. Unless a guy is Cooper Flagg, unless a guy is Carmelo Anthony, who can come in and immediately just carry your team, you're almost better with the guys that you know you're going to have for 3 or 4 years. So that's kind of my stance on a few of these high upside guys. Purdue needs dudes in this 2026 class who can come in right away and play, because they're going to lose the best senior class in college basketball this year. And it's a big, robust class. It's not just the caliber of the guys, but it's also the number of guys. So with the Cam Williams and a few of these other guys, it's if you get them, awesome. They could be great players, but you also kind of look at the diminishing returns of, you put so much into a guy, and then you might not get all that much out of him when all is said and done. I always compare it to Jaden Ivey, where he got so good so fast that by the time he became a really, really good player, he was already on the NBA clock. And I will keep saying this, that had he not hurt his foot and missed the first month of his freshman year, or most of the first month of his freshman year, Purdue never gets year 2 from Jaden Ivey. And that's a really good thing from a program perspective, from a cachet perspective. But when you're trying to build continuity, and this is probably an unpopular viewpoint here, when you're trying to build continuity and you're trying to have older teams, it does kind of make things tough. Purdue is not Kansas or Duke, where they can go out and just get new plug and play guys every single year, nor should they want to be necessarily. So if Purdue gets Cam Williams, awesome. If Purdue gets Anthony Thompson, which I don't think they will, awesome. But you also have to kind of temper things a little bit in terms of what those guys might actually be capable of, in terms of what Purdue needs right away. Because 2026 is post Braden Smith, post Fletcher Lawyer, post Trey Kaufman-Renn, post Oscar Clough. You need guys who can come in right now and play, and preferably stay, play and stay. That is the I'm gonna coin that phrase for the 2026 class. That's the optimal term: play and stay. You need play and stay guys. And I don't know if some of these higher end guys that Purdue's recruiting are that type of guy.
Yeah, and I'm going to reach back for an example. This was after the whole one and done phenomenon started, because the eligibility rule came into play, or the NBA rule came into play shortly after this, in the mid 2000s. But I to bring it close to home, it's, do you want Eric Gordon or do you want E'Twaun Moore? And that's not to say that E'Twaun Moore wasn't a great recruit. I mean, E'Twaun Moore, if I remember, was a top 50 recruit himself. Yes. He wasn't quite to the level of Gordon, but he was a coveted and way up there recruit. But, as it played out, you get 1 year from Gordon, which, don't get me wrong, was a good year. I remember he had a wrist problem and things like that. But you had, 4 tremendous years from E'Twaun Moore. And I know it doesn't always work out that way, Brian, because sometimes, you get Cooper Flagg or Carmelo Anthony, you get that 5-star guy, and he takes off, and he gives you that sort of season. But those cases seem to be few and far between.
That's a great example, and I can give you another example right now. Would you rather have Tay Kinney, the 5-star point guard that Purdue's been recruiting forever, or would you rather have Luke Erdle, who you'll have for 4 years and be a hallmark or a staple in your program? Most people would probably say Tay Kinney, because he's a pro and he can change your team right away in a very profound way. You just won't have him very long. He's an NBA guy that you'll have to put a lot of money into. You'll have to hand the keys right over to him, and he is up to that. He is that good. But at the same time, is 6 months of Tay Kinney more valuable than, I can't do math in my head. How many months would Luke Erdle be at Purdue if he stayed 4 years?
48.
Thank you.
I think that's right. Slash hope.
Because Luke Erdle's got a chance to be a really good college player. Luke Erdle's got a chance to be a textbook program guy, a great leader, a tone setter competitively, and a foundational sort of guy where you know what you're getting from him all throughout his career. I don't want to put a ceiling on what he can do at Purdue. I don't want to put a cap on it. And I don't want the whole 4-year guy thing to come off as a backhanded compliment, because it's not. But he's going to be a really, really good cultural fit for Purdue. He's going to be a foundational pillar for Purdue in its program. In all likelihood, who knows? As I said before, everything resets when kids enroll in college. But that's how it looks in his profile. That's everything I've observed from him. And the E'Twaun Moore over Eric Gordon thing is a great example, because it would have been great to have an Eric Gordon back then, but whether or not it would have transformed your program in a meaningful way beyond what I always kind of look at Gary Harris too. You know, people are still lamenting Gary Harris in 2012. Well, had Gary Harris come to Purdue when Purdue had a bad infrastructure around him, those were teams that were bad. They just didn't know how to play. They were, as Matt Painter would be the first to admit, they were flawed. They didn't have very high basketball IQs. They didn't make each other better. They didn't pass. They couldn't shoot. It's a bad combination, by the way. Had Gary Harris come into that situation, it might have been his problem as much as Purdue's problem. And it might not have gone well. I don't think anything was walking into that situation and just taking a team that finished last in the Big Ten and all of a sudden turning it into something much more. So having the really solid 4-year player is a really good thing, because then he becomes one of those guys that would have made, in my tortured example here, he would have made Gary Harris work. If Gary Harris came along today and came to Purdue, whereas the guys on those 2012 teams would not have made Gary Harris better. It's like I always give part of, the credit for Carson Edwards' success to the guys who accepted him, the seniors, the Dakota Mathias, the PJ Thompsons, the Vince Edwards, whose place on the team, they were never threatened by his gravity. They were never threatened by him coming in and getting so much leeway that he earned through his talent. But it takes the right people around these guys to make recruits work too. And that's, I don't think people recognize that as much as they ought to. And the Luke Erdles are the guys who can be the guy that other people make better, but they're also always the guy who make other people better, if I said that correctly. That was a really tortured thought that I just tried to get out.
No, Brian, it's no different. If we're going to make another analogy, it's the difference between getting drafted by the Charlotte Hornets and the San Antonio Spurs.
Excellent example. Yes. The Washington Wizards versus the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, it's just there's the context of it as well. Some guys are good enough to overcome it, and they're going to be good no matter where they land. And maybe, Carmelo Anthony, Cooper Flagg are probably two examples of that. But some guys that, they need to have that to be built around them. It's very hard to swim upstream against that current when you're entering into a franchise or an organization or a program that just can't find its way. And we see that, I think, happen a whole heck of a lot with recruits, especially when they make the wrong choice and they go somewhere and they don't develop. And, a lot of it has nothing to do with them. A lot of it has everything to do with the stuff that's around them.
Well, I think people also, I think that the landmine people step on when analyzing these things is that, sometimes people expect teenagers to make adult decisions when they're not adults. And, they expect the adults who've never been through anything like this before to view things the same way that those of us who kind of take a more detached, sober look at things, would. And, that's where Purdue is really good with the guys who pick up what they're putting down, who understand what we're talking about here about fit, about development, about the process, and, things like that. But those kids don't grow on trees. And that's where Purdue does a pretty good job finding those guys and really dialing in on those guys, and more as often as not getting those guys. And that's part of the reason they have been so good and they've been so consistent here over the last, I should just start saying modern era, in its modern era. But some of those, really, really mega talented guys, they're not looking, for fit or development. They're looking for, basically an NBA internship. And, Purdue will play that game at times. The only time they've really made a deal, I think, was Caleb Swanigan, where it was all about Biggie. It was all about getting him to the NBA. And Matt Painter followed through on every promise he made. And that's how he is. And he doesn't make promises very often. That was one of the cases where he did make promises. And he lived up to every one of them. And Caleb Swanigan's freshman year, that lost Purdue games. That cost Purdue games because the learning curve, the growing pains that came with Caleb Swanigan's freshman year, playing power forward, as was the arrangement that Swanigan agreed to, it did not necessarily make Purdue all that much better in the grand scheme of things right away. Now, the second year, when all the hard days from his freshman year led to him being the best player in the country, arguably the second year, was worth it, yes. But, Purdue will pick and choose its spots on trying to get that guy and then putting, good role players around them or guys who can make them better. That's Purdue's pitch right now, I think, to Taylon Kinney, who they're still recruiting. They're recruiting him to come in and sort of be the guy right away, even though they have Omer Mayer who can play a couple of different spots. But they're telling Tay Kinney that you come here, we give you the keys to our offense, the way Braden Smith has the keys to our offense, but we're going to surround you with guys who share the ball. We're going to surround you with shooters. We're going to surround you with, big guys who can finish when you run pick and roll and things like that. And that sets you up for early success, and early success sets you up for your NBA goals in the short term. Now, whether that's enough to overcome all the commas that are going to come on the checks that come from Kentucky and Louisville, I don't know. I would seriously doubt it, but that's Purdue's approach anyway, and that's something they will do from time to time. But by and large, Purdue looks for its culture, its substance, its developmental, its continuity guys as much as anything. And I don't say that to be reductive about what the players they're picking out to recruit are capable of. It's just the way they recruit is they want those guys that are going to embrace being around for a while, getting better, and preferably playing right away. But if not, hey, that's cool. They want to win as much as anything. And the process nowadays really helps Purdue filter out its guys. I think the NIL part of it, I think the portal part of it has really created a filter where the dynamics at play in recruiting really have helped Purdue sort of funnel out guys who they don't think will fit very well and get to the guys they know will. And again, another part of Purdue's modern era success is that element of it in recruiting, the evaluation process.
Yeah, and they've obviously the results have spoken for themselves. They miss just like everybody else misses sometimes, but there's been far more hits than misses when it comes to that. Recaps from Rock Hill, and Brian will keep the recruiting hotboard sizzling with content and videos that you're just not going to get anywhere else. You can follow his work, of course, right here at goldenblack.com and on social media. Brian, appreciate it as always, man. We'll catch up again soon. Get some rest.
Thanks, Derek. Appreciate it, man.
That's our friend Brian Neubert, goldenblack.com, columnist and basketball knower. And that is our show for this Tuesday. Thanks once again to our tremendous sponsors like the Purdue Federal Credit Union, the official credit card for Purdue fans, East End Grill and Ripple and Company, two distinctive bistros across the street from one another on the far end of Main Street in Lafayette. The Whitaker Inn for unparalleled comfort and cuisine. Visit the Whitaker Inn. Sand Valley Resort. Tee off this golf season at Sand Valley. All you have to do is go to sandvalley.com and book your tee times online today. And finally, the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research, which has a history of innovation and one goal for the future: defeat cancer. Join the fight and donate to the Purdue Institute for Cancer Research today. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. And of course, you can leave a positive review on whatever podcast platform you're utilizing. Also, if you haven't already, you'll want to subscribe to goldenblack.com, obviously the site, but also the channel, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this, and enable alerts. New highlights and videos are uploaded regularly. As I mentioned, this stuff that Brian's doing down there, you're not going to get that anywhere else. Not the flood of content that you're going to get from somebody like Brian at goldenblack.com. And Dub doing some basketball stuff, doing a lot of football stuff as well. Has been a great addition to the team. And of course, Tom Dienhard, who will be at Big Ten Media Day. In fact, we'll have Tom on the show next week to preview exactly that. Football season right around the corner. I forgot to change my background. I'm sorry. This is still Ross-Ade, obviously behind me. We had a basketball talk with Brian, but I hope you forgive me as far as that is concerned. But thank you so much for listening. Thanks to our tremendous sponsors, and we will see you next time. Same bat time, same bat channel, same bat place. Nobody even knows what I'm talking about. Right here on Golden Black Radio. Have a great week, you guys.